Hello, we are opening the Town of Brookhaven Proposed Regional Recovery and Recycling Residue Facility Scoping Meeting. We'll hold on for a few moments for members of the public to join up with us. So please join and we'll get going here. Just going to give them a moment to, if there's anybody running a few moments late. Okay, well, I guess we'll get started. We're here for the Town of Brookhaven Proposed Regional Recovery and Recycling Residue Facility, this public scoping meeting. And I'd like to welcome you to the meeting. Good evening. My name is Peter Fontaine, and I'm a Principal Environmental Analyst at the Town of Brookhaven Division of Environmental Protection. As you're likely aware, the existing landfill known as Brookhaven Town Landfill Cell 6 is anticipated to reach capacity at 2024. Due to the scheduled closure, the town is currently exploring options to utilize other areas of the town's existing solid waste management facility to support the waste management and recycling services the town provides for taxpayers. One option under preliminary exploration is the proposed development of a regional repository for ash residue generated from local waste to energy plants and recycling residues generated from local recycling facilities. To be clear, a residue is not household trash or other raw waste. It is a byproduct of recycling and resource recovery operations, which help to reduce the amount of waste that needs to be disposed. A technical presentation will follow my opening remarks that will explain more details on the proposal. Pursuant to environmental laws and regulations, a project of this scope and magnitude will require the preparation of an environmental impact statement to allow for the public and other government agencies to properly review and come to a conclusion as to the possible environmental impacts of the action and whether they can be mitigated to a point where the development will be balanced in terms of the needs of the project sponsor and the resulting impacts to the environment. These laws and regulations are known as the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. The New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as SEQRA, regulates the review of environmental consequences of an action. The SEQRA process, as it now stands, is based on court decisions which have molded the process and the most recent revisions to the statewide SEQRA regulations. This public scoping meeting is held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law. The statewide regulations that implement the SEQRA are known as Part 617 of Title 6 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, specifically Title 6 New York Code of Rules and Regulations, Part 617.8, Scoping. The Town Board of the Town of Brookhaven is the lead agency for the project, as the application or action that triggers the SEQRA process is within its jurisdiction. The Town Board has determined that the proposed project is a Type 1 action pursuant to Chapter 80 of the Town Zoning Code and SEQRA Part 617. After assuming lead agency status, the Town Board issued a positive declaration on August 27, 2020, requiring the preparation of an environmental impact statement with public scoping. The draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, will assist the Town Board as lead agency under the SEQRA in rendering an informed decision on the proposed action. The contents of the DEIS will address the items specified in the positive declaration and will be prepared by the town's consultant to fully disclose potential impacts, proposed mitigation measures, and alternatives to the proposed project. Future stages of this review include lead agency review of comments and issuance of a final scoping document, and subsequently lead agency review and acceptance of the DEIS with respect to content and adequacy. The DEIS is intended to provide the Town Board, the public, and all involved government agencies with the information necessary to render informed decisions on the application. Once deemed acceptable in content and adequacy, the completed document will be made available for the public review, a public hearing will be held, and comments will be collected that will need to be addressed by the preparation of a final environmental impact statement, which responds to substantive agency and public comments received during the DEIS review period. Upon completion of the FEIS, or the final environmental impact statement, the Town Board will be responsible for the adoption of a statement of findings to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove the proposed action. Now, tonight's meeting. The public scoping process that we're here for tonight has 6 objectives. One is to focus the draft EIS on the potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. Two, to eliminate non-significant and non-relevant issues. Three, to identify the extent and quality of information needed. Four, to identify the range of reasonable alternatives to be discussed. Five, to provide an initial identification of mitigation measures. And six, to provide the public with an opportunity to participate in the identification of impacts. In addition to the comments received at the scoping session this evening, there'll be a 30-day written comment period. All written comments must be received no later than Monday, November 2nd, 2020. So at this point, I would like to remind everyone that we are very early in the review process of the action, and the technical review has not yet begun. So we will not necessarily be able to answer or address questions, but are here to supply the available information regarding the proposal and to allow for public input and participation as to the content of the environmental impact statement. I ask that you please hold all comments to the end of the upcoming presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll be hearing and collecting your comments for review and possible amendments to the draft scoping document. Anyone interested in commenting on the proposal at the end of the presentation may communicate with the town during that time via the chat or the Q&A function on the Zoom meeting board. Of course, written comments are welcome and encouraged. As mentioned, in addition to the comments received this evening, there will be a 30-day written comment period, and all written comments must be received by November 2nd, 2020. Now I'd like to direct your attention to the presentation that will be given by one of the town's consultants for the proposal, Ms. Candace Andre of VHB. Thank you, Ms. Andre.
Thank you, Peter. We are here tonight as part of the SEQRA process, which requires the systematic consideration of environmental factors of actions that are directly undertaken, funded, or approved by local, regional, and state agencies. Due to the time that it takes to get through SEQRA compliance, final design, and environmental permitting, the town has started this exploration in order to prepare for the scheduled closure of the existing landfill in 2024. The town of Brookhaven, as lead agency, has kicked off the SEQRA process by issuing a positive declaration, which requires the preparation of a draft environmental impact statement. The town has circulated the draft scope, which outlines the topics to be studied in the draft environmental impact statement. And as part of tonight's meeting and the comments that we receive from the community, we will produce a final scope, which will ultimately guide the preparation of the draft environmental impact statement. Next, please. Just so that everyone is on the same page, a draft scope is a written document that outlines the topics and analyses of potential environmental impacts of an action that will be addressed in the draft environmental impact statement. The draft scope includes environmental resource topics, resources to be used to evaluate those topics, proposed alternatives, and additional technical analyses proposed. A draft environmental impact statement is the primary source of environmental information about a proposed action, and it allows the public and agencies to review and comment that evaluation. It examines the nature and extent of identified potential environmental impacts of an action and how we can minimize adverse impacts. It also evaluates a range of reasonable alternatives to the proposed action. Next, please. The proposed Regional Resource and Recycling Residuals Facility is a specialized modern landfill that would be fully engineered in accordance with all federal, state, and local regulations that protect the unique environment we have here in Brookhaven. Just as a reminder, as Peter mentioned, residuals or residue is not household trash or other raw waste, but a byproduct of a recycling and resource recovery operations. The proposed facility would only accept waste-to-energy ash residuals, recycling residuals, and governmentally generated waste such as municipal street sweepings and navigational dredge materials in accordance with DEC operating requirements for Long Island landfills. There would be no construction debris accepted at the proposed facility. The town is undertaking a parallel effort to update the local solid waste management plan, which will feature new ways to reduce and recycle. The public will also have an opportunity to provide input on this plan. I want to give a brief overview of the town's existing programs and facilities for solid waste management. Thank you, Peter. General waste management information and details on the proposed action. The Town Department of Recycling and Sustainable Materials Management provides comprehensive services to residents to help them recycle, reuse, reduce, and dispose of household waste generated. A guide to these services can be found on the town website. The department manages residential collection services and contracts with carters to bring trash and recyclables to the town's facility. There's no land burial of any residential materials collected curbside at the town facility. Instead, lots of small loads of household trash are deposited into a waste transfer station so that the town efficiently transports the municipal solid waste to Covanta Hempstead, a waste-to-energy facility. Recyclables are sorted and processed at the town's facility and are then sold and transported to businesses who give them to companies to process them into raw materials for reuse. The existing facility also contains residential drop-off areas, materials processing areas, and the existing landfill, which is scheduled to close in 2024. In summary, recycling and other services are provided to residents at the facility, and no raw household trash is currently landfilled nor planned to be landfilled under the proposed action. Next, please. We've talked a little bit about waste to energy tonight, and a waste to energy facility is a plant that converts municipal solid waste to energy, producing sustainable electricity. This practice generates less pollutants, reduces reliance on municipal solid waste landfills, and extracts metals out of municipal solid waste, which are recycled. Waste to energy ash is a byproduct of this process, and that ash remaining after combustion is about 1/10 of the original waste volume. The town's waste to energy programs are consistent with the principles of the 1988 State Solid Waste Management Act and the State Solid Waste Management Plan Beyond Waste. The town reduces the amount of solid waste generated, reuses materials or recycles materials that cannot be reused, recovers energy from solid waste that cannot be economically or technically reused or recycled, and disposes of solid waste that is not being reused or recycled by land burial or other approved methods. All garbage or municipal solid waste generated on Long Island either goes to a waste to energy plant or is landfilled off island. Next, please. So this is an aerial of the town's solid waste management facility, which is outlined in blue. It's 534 acres total. And the area in red on the eastern or right side of the aerial photograph is the proposed regional recovery and recycling residue facility area. It's 121 acres in total. The left or western part of the property is the existing 270 acre landfill. So one thing about this is it should be noted that the proposed 59 acre facility will be separate and distinct from the existing landfill on the town's property. Next, please. Of the 121 acre project site, there will be approximately 23 acres of forest area preserved, including a minimum of 25-foot buffer zone with natural trees around the site. The proposed waste footprint of 59 acres will include only 29 acres, of which is currently cleared and utilized as soils and yard waste processing area. 15 acres of the proposed project site will be used for stormwater ponds designed in accordance with the DEC design manual, and it will also include a collection, storage, and treatment system for leachate, ensuring any rainwater that comes into contact with waste is swiftly removed from the site and hauled to the Suffolk County Sewage Treatment Plant in West Babylon. Less than half of the 121-acre project site will be occupied by the disposal facility footprint. And of that area, about half of it is already in use for the waste management purposes. Next, please. The Federal Resource Conservation and Recovery Act mandates that landfills be engineered to protect the environment from any contaminants that may be present in the waste stream. The diagram below shows generic components of the proposed facility, which will be evaluated within the draft environmental impact statement. In this environmental review, it provides an opportunity to study the effectiveness of these different layers of environmental protection. There are 4 layers of liners that will be constructed below the residual waste, and once waste placement is complete, additional layers of material will be constructed to form a cap on the facility. Next, please. What you see here is an aerial photo of the existing project site. The cleared area has been in use for many years as yard waste and soil processing, The thick gray outline represents the proposed perimeter roadway, which would be the interior roadway used to access the proposed facility. Any waste to energy ash or recycling residuals deposited on site would be contained within the perimeter roadway by the construction of berms and walls. It would take many years to fill and reach the final proposed height, which has yet to be determined, but would not exceed the height of the existing landfill on the opposite side of the town's solid waste management facility. Next. Local ash disposal capacity will allow Brookhaven residents to continue to have a sustainable solid waste management system that recovers resources and generates renewable energy. The local recycling component will support existing and future recycling initiatives and ultimately lead to reductions in waste generation. The proposed facility is part of a shared services initiative to help make Long Island more affordable and environmentally sustainable, benefiting residents of numerous towns. The state awarded $20 million to fund the Brookhaven United Plan, which includes dedicated state funding for a project to construct a regional facility to provide benefits for a sustainable solution to solid waste disposal. Next. In addition to SEQRA compliance, the proposed project will undergo thorough environmental and safety review by a number of regulatory agencies, such as the Federal Aviation Administration, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Suffolk County, the town of Brookhaven, and these agencies will use the DEIS as the primary source of environmental information. Next, please. So SEQRA also mandates that these agencies act on the substantive information produced by the environmental review and documented within the draft environmental impact statement. The graph in front of you shows a very high level schedule of the SEQRA process. And as you can see, the town of Brookhaven has established lead agency as themselves. They've determined significance of the proposed action. So that means that they anticipate potential environmental impacts that need to be evaluated. And now we're in the scoping process. So again, this environmental review that the agencies will base decisions upon is informed by the final scope, and that is what we're here asking for your input and support in producing. Next, please. The town has circulated and posted the draft scope on the town website. At this point, several topics have been identified for study in the draft environmental impact statement, and I'd like to go into a little more detail on each topic, and of course, hear from you on these topics and other potential issues. So a section of the draft environmental impact statement will include looking at subsurface conditions, soils, and topography on the site. And this will include geotechnical information, earthwork information, and a full hydrogeologic investigation report, which is a subsurface investigation regarding existing groundwater flow and soil structure that is required by the DEC as part of the Part 360 series permit process. For water resources, we'll be evaluating the quality of both groundwater and surface water, potential impacts to wetlands, how drainage and stormwater will be handled on the site, again, the leachate treatment and collection, and consistency of the proposed action with both the Carmans River Conservation Management Plan and Beaver Dam Creek Watershed Management Plan. For the ecology section, we will do a full inventory of both plants and animals, specifically looking at potential impacts to endangered, threatened, and special concern species, including the northern long-eared bat, which is a federally listed threatened species, and the eastern box turtle, which is a state-listed species of special concern. We'll also map and discuss significant natural communities and habitats. Next, please. Land use and community character will be evaluated, looking at existing and future land use patterns and zoning, consistency of the proposed project with relevant land use plans, existing and necessary community services of the proposed action, and potential environmental justice communities within the surrounding area. A full traffic impact study will be completed that'll look at both local and regional traffic conditions. The air quality analysis will include the potential for any emissions of pollutants and consider sources such as traffic and operations at the proposed facility. We will complete a full odor control plan and evaluate potential types of odors associated with the proposed facility. And an operational assessment, both for primary and secondary noise, will be completed. Next, please. There is a small area in the southwestern portion of the site that has been identified as a potential archaeologically sensitive area. It's within a buffer of a known feature south of the highway. And so we'll be coordinating with the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. We'll be looking at aesthetics, including the visual character of the surrounding areas, and then what the surrounding properties and roadways are expected to see of the proposed facility. And then there'll be an entire section on really what is solid waste management, how has the town handled solid waste management and their planning process historically, sustainability of the proposed action, how do waste to energy plants work, and how our proposed facility complies with Beyond Waste and other relevant studies. Next, please. As I previously mentioned, we also look at alternatives in the draft environmental impact statement. And these alternatives can include characteristics such as size, site, design, the use of the property, and also thinking through relevant thresholds of impacts. So the alternatives must be feasible considering the objectives and capabilities of the project sponsor. And the range of alternatives evaluated must include the no action alternative. Next, please. So the draft scope currently indicates that we'll be looking at the proposed action, which we've detailed this evening, and the no action, which means that there's no development of the proposed action on the site. This no action alternative would result in large amounts of ash being landfilled off island, adding costs to the disposal fees, diverting funds from town programs, and increasing property tax burdens. It would also add significant truck traffic, increasing deterioration of aging infrastructure, traffic congestion, air pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions. Overall, the no action alternative would result in long-term increased reliance on municipal solid waste landfills off island. Next. So where are we in the process? Tonight we're here to hear from you on your comments on the draft scope. As Peter mentioned, we'll be accepting comments on the draft scope through November 2nd. And then in mid-November, we plan to have a final scope prepared, which will inform the preparation of the draft environmental impact statement. Next, please. So how can you stay involved? So we're required to coordinate with all involved and interested agencies throughout the process. Again, we're going through the scoping period right now with you. The public and resource agencies have the ability to review and comment on the draft environmental impact statement when it's complete. And then there will also be a public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement. Next, please. And then to stay informed on the project, all project materials are being posted to the town website as they are complete. So please take a look at that. And then you'll see advertisements for public input opportunities in the environmental notice bulletin, again, the town website, newspapers, and local libraries. So please stay involved. I appreciate your time. I'm going to turn it back to Peter to open the comment portion of the public meeting. And I look forward to hearing comments.
Thank you, Ms. Andre. That was a wonderful presentation and very informative. At this point in time, we'll be taking public comments. If there are anybody wishes to do so, you can use the Q&A button and provide a comment. And so do we have anybody up just yet?
Hi, Peter. We have 4 people who would like to speak. And I just want to let everybody know that this is just for them to provide their comments, not to ask questions. There seems to be a lot of people who want to ask questions, but this is more of just a comment forum. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. And the first person we're going to bring in for you, Pete, is Dr. Catherine Johnson, who we're going to bring in right now for you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Thank you for coming.
Hi, yes. Thank you for hearing me. In the town's document, Regional Ash Monofill and Enhanced Ash Recycling Facility Savings Analysis, dated July 10th, 2020, on page 1, the project we're discussing today is described as a, quote, landfill renovation and a means to, quote, increase the useful life of the landfill. However, the scoping document that the town submitted on 8/27/2020 insists that this landfill project is, quote, distinct and separate from the existing landfill. So I'm wondering which it is. Is this a landfill renovation, as was said on 7/10, or a distinct and separate entity, as was said on 8/27. This discrepancy is important because of the issue of transparency and public participation. For years, the town and town supervisor have insisted that the landfill will close in 2024. So how can they justify this effort to build a new, quote, ashfill adjacent to the old landfill as anything other than an expansion?
Okay, well, we're not going to address the questions right now. What we're going to do is take your comment and your question, and we'll inform the draft scope and make amendments to that for the final scope. And that comment will be addressed in the draft environmental impact statement. That's an important comment. And I agree with you that we need to explain how this is separate from the existing landfill. And so that will be added to the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Pete, so we're going to get Dr. Johnson. We're going to just put you back into the audience.
Thank you.
And Pete, you have up next for speaker number 2. We're going to bring in Justin Johnson is coming in next.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson. Welcome to the meeting.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you for taking, I have 2 comments. So the first, hold on, sorry. The first one, this is a question about the economic impact of the landfill on North Bellport and how the existing landfill and the proposed ashfill will impact the economic trajectory of that particular community. By proposing that the landfill expansion, the town is consolidating and extending the economic blight of the past 50 years into the foreseeable future. How does the town justify this? Why is the area being so targeted in terms of bearing the brunt of the waste and consumption habits of 2 million households throughout Long Island and even beyond? What are some of the ways that the town will make these impacted communities whole? That's one issue that I think needs to be addressed much more fulsomely in the next proposal. And that the other comment I have, which is brief, I think is important. This is a question about the environmental safety of ashfills per se. In 2020, recently, an article in the respected journal Environmental Science and Pollution Research presented an overview of an analysis of the current research about municipal solid waste incineration. And I know we've had a presentation to cover some of this. But one of the research trends that the article identified was the, quote, growing concerns about the environmental contamination and the health impacts of municipal solid waste incineration ashes on local communities. The ash left over from incineration has high contents of, as mentioned, heavy metals, organic pollutants, and soluble salts. The list of possible harms from exposure to municipal solid waste incineration ash is extensive. And many of the substances left over and concentrated in the ash have carcinogenic, mutagenic, and immunotoxic properties. All of the research highlights the necessity and expense of long-term monitoring in order to attempt to safely contain the harm of ash. We do not believe that Brookhaven Town has shown its ability to manage the previous landfill very safely. Over the years, we have seen leachate plumes. We have seen violations in the Clean Air Act. We have seen noxious odors. We have seen people becoming sick, and the community has not been satisfied that that harm has been contained yet, that people have been helped, and that most importantly are concerned that this could happen again, okay? So what does the town have to say to people who look at the history of the landfill and are skeptical about this expansion, this ashfill expansion? I think that this is not a new issue. This is a long-standing thing. So this has to be addressed, I think.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. I can't address them right now individually. We'll put them into the draft scope and they'll be addressed in the environmental impact statement. I will say in the environmental impact statement, a large portion of it will have to be the justification of the project, the reasons for the proposal, and hopefully the air quality section of the environmental impact statement can address a number of those issues. But we'll be taking them all into consideration and very much appreciate you coming in and letting us know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Pete, just want to give a reminder, it seems there's 2 people with their hands up. If they want to speak, I think it's Hannah and Monique, if they can just use the chat window or the Q&A to let us know if they'd like to speak. And the next person that we're going to bring in for you is going to be Ryan Madden. So they're coming in now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Madden. Thank you for coming. Oh, hey, Ryan, how are you? You're still muted.
I'm unmuted, of course. You can't have a Zoom meeting without someone forgetting to do that.
Good to see you.
It's been a while since we've talked about electric vehicles. Good to see you. So I'm with the Long Island Progressive Coalition, and as I'm sure you'll hear from others tonight, we're part of a Brookhaven landfill action and remediation group. I first actually just wanted to make a comment on the qualification or categorization of waste to energy transfer as a sustainable modes of producing electricity. There's a reason it's not considered in the alternative compliance mechanism under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's because it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and environmental justice concerns. So I wouldn't call that a sustainable resource. And then wanted to note that in the draft scope on page 1 of the plan, it says that local agencies have been evaluating potential solutions to address this imminent closure for years. And wondering what the potential solutions that the local agencies have evaluated and who has been consulted in regards to the closure of the landfill. And I asked this because I saw that the cost savings analysis document commissioned by the town and that the only 2 premises were trucking the ash off of Long Island or ash filling it at the Brookhaven landfill. So these 2 solutions don't really consist of a robust review of like an array of options to deal with Long Island's waste crisis, like generally, because the town of Brookhaven is where this is being housed, but this is a regional issue. And like we're in a moment of like massive ecological collapse, and there's larger conversations around a just transition away from extractive forms of dealing with our problems to a more regenerative and community driven. And it just seems to be kind of like a replication of the kind of the status quo of like going about problems, pushing them off to the future and not getting to the real root of things. And like involving the community in a comprehensive reimagining of what it could look like to deal with these problems in a holistic and systemic way. So kind of just general comment on what I'm seeing as a perpetuation of like the old way of doing things in a moment in time where it's very clear that we need to like fundamentally rethink how we're relating to our land, to our people, and what our systems of governance are supposed to function as. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. So you'd like to see more alternatives in the preparation of the EIS?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And of course, I'd also like to remind everybody, written comments are always well received and appreciated. So anything that you can send in, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Good to see you.
Peter, so your next speaker is going to be Adrienne Esposito, and she's coming in now.
Oh, great. Good evening, Ms. Esposito. Thank you for coming and attending our meeting this evening. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you also. As was said, I'm Adrienne Esposito, Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. I want to make specific comments on the scoping, the draft scoping document. The first is that we're working backwards from it's critical that any proposed or new ash fill adds zero burden onto the community. And of all communities on Long Island, this community deserves zero additive burden. Right now, I want to talk about the quantity. In the draft scope, there is no identified quantity that the ash fill would take. And also I listened very carefully to Ms. Andres, who said we don't yet know the height. It could be as high as the landfill, which is currently 276 feet tall. So I think it's very important to identify the quantity of ash that's being proposed to be disposed of at this ash fill. We know, for instance, that on Long Island, the 4 incinerators generate 425,000 tons of ash per year. 350,000 tons go to currently the Brookhaven landfill. But also the 75,000 tons extra goes to the Babylon ash fill, which also will be closing in 2029. So are you anticipating taking that ash when that ash fill closes? So a lot of this environmental analysis, I think, is very, obviously all of it's important, but to not have a quantity identified, I think does a big disservice to the public and to the transparency of the project. So we would ask you to please put that in there. Obviously, water and air are big issues with us and also big for the community. We are happy to see in the scope that it talks a little bit about having groundwater monitoring detection and also surface water for polluted runoff from the ash. But I don't feel it goes far enough at all. So for instance, we feel extremely strongly about having what we call real-time monitoring and real-time access to data. So for instance, for both air and water, the public should not have to keep filing these FOIL requests to the DEC or to the town to find out the results of air and water monitoring. That is an archaic practice. I know everyone still does it, but it was really designed to keep the public in the dark. So I don't want to have to file anymore for groundwater reports and get them 4 months later or 2 months later, or air quality and get it 2 months later. It's our air, right? It's our water. It's our tax dollars paying for all the monitoring. Therefore, it should be our data. And I would really urge the town to look at the public as being a partnership in this data. So for instance, the Bay Park Sewage Treatment Plant in Nassau County has what's a air monitoring detection system where whenever hydrogen sulfide leaves the perimeter of that facility, they know within a second. And the community knows because
Ms.
it's all—
You've hit the 3-minute mark. If you could please summarize. Yes.
But my point is, I will summarize, thank you. My point is, for air and water, people deserve real-time monitoring with real-time data. Also, the air is extremely important. Not only we want particulate matter, fine particulate matter monitored, 2.5 microns or less, as well as VOCs. In the draft, it's a little bit ambiguous about whether you would do a rigorous air quality monitoring. It has a phrase which says, if qualitative analysis shows a need that you would do it, there's a need. There's always a need to protect public health. So we're going to be very strong about this issue. You want to build a state-of-the-art landfill? Then you need state-of-the-art monitoring so we know what is happening to the health and welfare of that community. Again, I will be submitting more detailed comments as requested that will go into more topics further, but thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, and we look forward to those written comments, and we'll make sure, along with your spoken comments, that they're integrated into the final scope and the more robust air monitoring program. That's very reasonable, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. I just wanted to point out two things. We're going to continually post information on the project on the project website. So we'll hopefully, as we roll along, we'll have updated project information. And as far as answering questions right now, the reason we're not jumping into answering questions right now is because it's early in the process. Quite frankly, I'm not versed in all the answers that would need to be supplied for these questions. We still have to do a technical review and do a number of things before we can actually advise in a knowledgeable manner. So rather than shooting from the hip without all the information that we would like to have right now, that's why we were just taking public comments. That's what the public scoping session is typically purposed for. So I apologize that we can't answer the questions right now. We're still early in the process in doing the studies, so we can provide these answers. And again, we'll be continually posting new information on the website. And of course, I'm always here at the town hall building. So thank you very much for your comments.
All right, Pete, your next speaker is going to be a Shoshana Hershkowitz, and they're coming on now.
Good evening, Ms. Hershkowitz. Thank you for coming. Oh, I can't quite hear you.
Ms. Hershkowitz, it seems like your audio is not connected, so you may need to connect your audio.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Shoshana Hershkowitz. I'm working with the Landfill Remediation Group as well as here on behalf of Suffolk Progressives. And the point that I'd like to make is that we know in the age of COVID, this is a respiratory illness. There are just some dots I think that need to be connected here. We know that COVID in particular has disproportionately affected Black and Latinx communities. And we also know that this area surrounding the landfill is predominantly Black and Latinx. And we know that the garbage that is being taken from the landfill being burned over in Hempstead, another predominantly Black community. When we tie all of this together, this is an issue of not only environmental justice, this is an issue of racial justice. We are seeing that the Black and Latinx communities are disproportionately being asked to bear the brunt of our waste. They are breathing in air that we have had to pay fines to the EPA for violating air quality in our town. And we are talking about, again, the lowest life expectancy in all of Long Island is in the area surrounding the landfill. So I certainly hope that the group of people planning this will speak to that community and will understand that for too long they have borne an unfair brunt of all of our waste and our inability to do a better job reducing waste on Long Island. And if this really means that we are supposed to close the landfill in 2024, we shouldn't be adding in Asheville. We should be talking about how to do better with waste management. This has gone on for decades, and this community has borne the brunt of our inability to handle waste for far too long.
Thank you very much. It's a very important topic. The environmental justice issues are coming up, and they need to be studied in the environmental impact statement. So we certainly appreciate your comments, and they will be integrated into the final scope for the preparation of the EIS. Thank you very much, Ms. Hershkowitz. We
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Pete, your next speaker is Abina Asari. She's coming in now.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Asari. Thank you for coming this evening.
I'm really glad to have this chance. That the question that I have.
I just muted you, Ms. Asari. So it looks like you're connected on 2 devices. So if you could please disconnect on one of your devices. We heard some audio feedback, and I see you're in the meeting twice. So if you can please disconnect from one, and then we'll turn your audio back on to avoid that echoing you just heard.
Is this any better?
There
Yes.
seems to be a slight echo. Want to try again?
Okay. So I just have a simple question based on the presentation. I saw that there will be particular studies done about the wildlife around the proposed Asheville site. There was a specific discussion about the eastern box turtle. And I think that these are definitely important initiatives, right? We know that our life as people is really connected to other animals, other life forms around us. I was surprised to see, though, that there was no discussion about doing similar health studies about the people who are going to surround the Asheville. That seems to me a very significant and troubling oversight. And I think that we have lots of reason to, and actually we have a great opportunity here, because there is an existing landfill, which is right next door, which has been accepting ash in cells 5 and 6 for some time now. So we have some grounds to see, particularly in terms of respiratory illness, particularly in terms of cancer, particularly in terms of other sort of health illnesses which have been shown to be related to toxic ash. The proposed Asheville expansion site is near the existing landfill, which is near the Frank P. Long School, which is the school that my children are slated to attend in a few years. As people know, there has been lots of questions about the health of the students and staff at the Frank P. Long School. Some of those questions remain outstanding. My main point is that I think it is very important in this environmental impact statement to have some sort of research and studies done about the health impacts of the existing landfill and also the health impacts of other ash fills, right? We have other ash fills which exist throughout the country. We should look at the communities surrounding those other ash fills and get some of that data so that we can really know what to expect. And I would just ask that the same level of scrutiny, which goes into the effort to look at the eastern box turtle and other important wildlife, would also be applied to the human life, which is also in the area. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes, a human health and safety section is a very, very good idea. And we should be able to get other examples and studies of other ash fills that are in the country. And yes, thank you very much for your comments, and we'll be addressing those in the final scope. That's really great. Thank you.
All right. Pete, next up is Monique Fitzgerald, and she's coming in now.
Good evening, Ms. Fitzgerald. Thank you for coming this evening.
Oh, Ms. Fitzgerald, you're muted. If you could please unmute yourself. You should be getting a prompt unmute right now.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, sound good. All right, thank you for having this meeting and allowing us to comment. So just the first thing I wanted to just kind of get a bearing of, I know Candace Andre spoke earlier. She did the presentation, and you yourself, I'm not familiar with your positions, and or do you work for the town? Do you work for a private company?
I work for the town of Brookhaven. Yes, I work in the Division of Environmental Protection.
Okay, and Miss Andre?
She works for the consulting firm that the town's hired to assist in the preparation of the environmental impact statement, VHB.
What was the name of the consulting firm?
It's called VHB.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to piggyback off of a few things that have already been said. Ms. Shoshana, I think, brought up the life expectancy of the people in North Bellport. Long Island, Newsday did a report saying that our life expectancy is 73.2 years old, and that's the lowest on Long Island. So with that, we wanted to know, is there any way that we can expand upon finding out why that is, and if the landfill contributes to the low life expectancy of the people in the North Bellport area? So that is a question that I really want to be put on the record and researched, and to have an answer back on that. And then the other part was with Help Suffolk. We did talk about the school, that the school has been impacted with the landfill, and there was a whole study done in 2017. Just to make a point of that, in 2017, we were told that the landfill would be closed in 2024. Yet at the same time, there was a push or a proposal being put in place for this second ash fill. So I don't think that that was good faith on the town of Brookhaven side, because if we're talking about landfills and you're telling us you're closing a landfill, for you to also be proposing a second ash fill at the same time and not saying anything to the community, I think that is something that needs to be put on record, that if you're gonna be transparent, be transparent. And that right there is not transparent. it's not a way that we can trust the town to give us clear answers on what we're asking. So in my opinion, an ash fill is no different than a landfill. And if it's going to be occupying the same space, then we're not getting what we're asking for, which is a closure of the landfill. So back to the school. So we were addressing the Frank P. Long School at the time, 2017.
I'm sorry, Ms.
However,
Fitzgerald,
there is a residence on that same street, and there's also a shelter on that same street called Help Suffolk, which houses large families who live in the area, and the children go to those schools in the area as well. And I haven't had any information that there's any studies being done or anything to address the quality of life of the residents in the shelter of Help Suffolk. So I don't even know if they're being brought to speed on what's going on with the landfill and how it could possibly be affecting them. Some of the people that live in Help Suffolk are not from the area, so they may not be familiar with the landfill at all. So I believe the town, or the onus is on the town to educate and reach out to Help Suffolk to let them know what's going on and what their plans are. So if you are proposing the second ash fill, I believe some kind of outreach needs to be done in the Help Suffolk facility or the shelter so that they know what they're doing, and they also need to be brought in on this conversation. Not just the administration, no, I'm talking about
just
the
a reminder, you're about a minute over your time.
All right, so that's me in a nutshell. So basically, I just want to have the town do a comprehensive study on why our life expectancy in Bellport is so low and is the lowest in the on Long Island. And also, I want there to be some type of outreach and study done with what's going on at Help Suffolk, because they are right at the epicenter of the whatever impacts the landfill is doing to our area. So thank you.
Those are important comments, and we'll work on that transparency and that life expectancy study. I really appreciate you coming down today. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder, Pete, and I'm going to remind everybody in the audience that they have a 3-minute window, and we'll remind them as we get closer to that window to summarize.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. It's a 3-minute timed comment period. So we ask that at 3 minutes you try to wrap it up. We have a number of speakers that want to speak tonight, so we certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so next you have Kareem, and we'll bring them in now.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for coming down.
Hi, my name's Karim Odakan. I'm a local primary care doc. I have a few points to make for the DEIS and the scoping document. First, just because the town refers to the landfill as only cell 6 right now and describes the ash fill as a new landfill, and because you say it's separate and distinct to intentionally minimize the proposed impact on the surrounding community, does not mean that it is. It's an expansion of the capacity of the existing solid waste management facility. The proposed landfill needs to be examined as this expansion. And 2, in relation to the adjacent proposed 228-acre waste transfer station directly to the north of this solid waste management facility. The cumulative impact of the existing landfill, the proposed landfill expansion at Asheville, and the simultaneously proposed waste transfer station all need to be looked at in a whole coordinated fashion. This is not planning. This is not environmental planning. You are part of the environmental planning of the county, of the town of Brookhaven. Next, the DEIS should really look at the potential of dust generating ash fill as it relates to respiratory irritants in the middle of a pandemic. The fact that a dust generating ash fill is being proposed in the middle of areas hardest hit by this pandemic raises a lot of questions about the town's intent. Also, there's no other discussion of other sites on Long Island. The only site that has been located is adjacent to a potential environmental justice area. An objective scoping should determine a set of alternative sites and impacts. The town is simply not so the question is, what other sites has the town looked at that are not adjacent to an environmental justice area? Also, the consultant talked about the planning for this as a product of the town's municipal consolidation and efficiency plan. It's important to note that the funding for MCEC grants require that special attention be made to ensure that the applicant's minority and disenfranchised populations are part of the outreach process. So I'd like to outline how special attention was made to ensure that Brookhaven's minority and disenfranchised populations were part of the outreach process that proposed to expand the Brookhaven landfill. Okay. Also, the scoping document notes that the proposed Regional RRRF is not near a school, but the existing solid waste management facility, of which this is an increase in its capacity, is proximate to Frank P. Long Intermediate School, and the DEIS should evaluate the cumulative effect of the entire expanded SWMF. And I'm not going to repeat what other people have said, but in addition to that, we also have a concurrent waste transfer station being proposed directly to the north, which is abutting the Yaphank jail. And any health concerns should be evaluated for the impact on these vulnerable populations as well.
Dr. Cream, just a heads up, you're at your 3-minute mark.
Okay, the scoping document refers to the Regional RRF as consistent with the pattern of existing development, but simply not true. The eastern portion of the site abuts a residential neighborhood on Yaphank Avenue, as well as the residential development immediately south of Sunrise Highway. I expect more from my politicians.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. We appreciate your comments. And again, I'd like to just remind people the written comments are very much welcome. So if you have anything written down that you prepared for this hearing, like to send it in, please do so. We'd appreciate that. So we'll put that into the cumulative impacts and the alternative section of the scoping document. Thank you very much.
All right, Pete, next we have Hannah Thomas, who's coming in now.
Good evening, Ms. Thomas. Thank you for coming.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for coming.
Yes, I am a longtime Bellport resident, and my history of the landfills go back to 1970. I was on board when we had the failed attempts of moving the garbage by railroad and by boat. This is how far I go back with this environmental issue. There's been many violations from the town of Brookhaven with the landfill in Islip. Something fell through the cracks because we were cited for the Clean Air Act back then, failing to monitor and control landfill gases, and it's still moving forward. My point is, we're not being represented by the town of Brookhaven as a epidemic of what's going on here. I'm going back from 1970. Now you close the landfill on Bex Highway to move it to Brookhaven, and we still have the same issues. They said they opened up a sulfur treatment system that they weren't even running continuously. They were slighted for that because it was supposed to be running continuously. There's a leakage of the water going into the cells. So it was like they sold the community a dream by putting a cap on some of the landfills, and we're still being measured for emissions, gas emissions. So we fell through the crack. I've been on a panel since 1970. So if the town of Brookhaven cannot handle this environmentally, then why can't this be a federal issue? I was on board when you sent the garbage out on a barge that floated for months, that couldn't be docked or anything, and it ended up burning in the Brooklyn and bringing it back to Long Island anyway. So we have fell through the crack as a community in this environmental issue. And no one is addressing the facts that we do have complaints of illness and sickness. People are out of work, can't even get disability, can't get their claims through because it's not a proven fact that these emissions from this landfill is the cause of it. But still, we're not getting the correct records of the emissions or the rain leakage of these caps that you supposedly sold us that was supposed to be environmentally safe. Now you're talking about closing a landfill. Now my question to you is, when a landfill is closed, like the one in Islip, what good is that property? Nothing gets decomposed under the soil. So if you were to dig it and use it, the gas emissions would still
Ms.
come
Thomas,
up.
you're at your 3-minute mark.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
So we're not getting any feedback on the effect of, even if you do close a landfill, if you do close a landfill, we're still gonna have the effects of the landfill.
Understood, ma'am.
We can't get the records of the emissions of the gas and everything as a community, and we don't have the effects of what a landfill will still do to a community when it is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Those are important.
And I am just a community, I live in this community, and I've been dealing with this since the 1970s. So maybe we better step it up to a federal level. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Ms. Thomas. Those are important comments, and we'll enter them in the record and hopefully address them adequately. We really appreciate you coming out today. Thank you.
All right, Pete, next you have Ira Castell coming in.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm being heard. If you can just give me a thumbs up.
I hear you now. Thank you for coming, Mr. Castell.
Okay. Yes, my name is Ira Castell. I'm a resident of Brookhaven town for over 55 years. You know, visiting this issue is not a new thing, and it'll be hard for me to speak intelligently in just a brief 3 minutes of time, given that so many other speakers have touched on important subjects. But one thing in particular that's making it difficult for me to speak as articulately as I'd like to is the lack of awareness of this particular scoping session. I think there was a poor job done to inform the general public in a much more meaningful way. This is a critical and important issue to this township and to its residents. In particular, it's not a new issue. In the 1980s, in the early 1980s, when I came out of graduate school from environmental planning at the University of North Carolina, it was clear then to many of our residents that the financial sustainability of the town of Brookhaven was built on a house of cards, constructed by mortgage recording taxes, which were booming at the time in the go-go 80s, and the landfill. It's been known for a very long time that this is the underpinning of the financial sustainability of this town. So it is incumbent upon this town to identify why we are now going to continue our thirst and hunger for other people's garbage to continue our financial well-being and health in the future. So I think we need to identify other resource streams of financing so that we are not dependent on feeding our landfill now with an ash fill, because we've been obliged to close the existing one, which should have never been expanded back originally. In addition to that, I don't know enough, to be honest. I haven't been able to study the documents, but I dare say that this area is either within or very nearby a special groundwater protection area, as well as possibly the central CEA, critical environmental area. So it is really a very pivotal location. I like what the doctor had to say previous to me, which is we're segmenting this thing out as if it's a whole new project instead of combining the entirety of a master plan about what we're doing. Because once we close the landfill, whenever that may be, 2024, before or after, and I apologize about the glare on my glasses,
oh, no
off the top of my receding hairline, but nonetheless, we need to understand how is more carefully, more clearly, how this integrates into the existing landfill. And once it's closed, doesn't mean it goes away. We still have to manage it. right? And that's why it is a contiguous area that should be planned for as a whole. And stop this game of trying to segment it out so that we don't have to involve the DEC in the same fashion as if we were expanding the landfill. I'm concerned about particulate matter in the air. I'll finish up with this. In two important comments. One, concerned about particulate matter, of course. But the other thing is nobody has said a word that I'm aware of where the construction and demolition debris is going to go once the landfill is closed. I've not heard nary a word about that. Nobody's addressed it. Nobody's commented on it. The landfill closes, but where does the C&D waste go? Okay, who gets it? And also, we've always, for 40 years, that I've been talking about a regional compact for dealing with garbage, and we've never really cooperated through multiple townships and through the counties, and that really ought to be done. I'm concerned also about the plant that you're talking about, constructing and recycling some of the ash waste into new products. I'd like to know what those are, what they're anticipating to do with those 4 acres where they're setting up, I believe, some type of plant to utilize the ash to construct new products. And that needs to be clearly delineated to the township and its residents. Again, I'd like to know more, and I wish I'd had more time to prepare. I found out about it 20 minutes ago.
Okay, well, Mr. Costello, we're really happy that you did get to us to give us your comments. There is the website where all the documents are available. I consider checking that out. And we do have a 30-day open written comment period. So anything else that you'd like to supply, if you do get a chance to review the documents, we'll be happy to take those comments, you know, in the next 30 days. So thank you very much for coming out. We're glad you made it here. Thank you.
Pete, next you have Dr. Georgette Grier-Kay coming on.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you for coming, Dr. Grier-Kay.
How are you? I must say that I'm not happy with the process. I have written a letter to the supervisor and all of the council members regarding who is actually sitting on the committee itself. The projects seem to have the decisions on who's sitting on the committee seems to have done in a silo. We are sick of the semantics with what's going on with this dump. And the semantics that is in Yaphank, no, that's the corner that you chose to use for address. We are sick of the saturation of everything that's ill will being put in our districts where minority people live. Enough is enough between the compost yards, between being saturated with emissions pollution from the parkways. And first of all, the EPA in early 2000s said that we were a non-attainable air zone. Why are we allowed to continue to move forward with putting all of this saturation in one community, from the sober houses, from the Section 8, from stripping us of our sanitation rights? Everything that has been done, why should we, the colored community, people of color, Black, African American, Latino, Native American, and the such, be subject to regional benefits without being subsidized? We pay the same taxes and more. We should not have to do that. Any host benefit package that should be discussed with the community as a whole. We have had enough of being dumped on. You guys need to get your knees off of our necks. We have been tired of the regional cost of living, which affects our health, our minds, our bodies, our spirit, and our bottom line, which is our property. Like most people, our properties, our houses are our investments, our future. And by you guys continuing to make us the regional dumping ground for everything that is ill-willed without any oversight, it affects our bottom line. It affects our economic ability to attain and keep land and or sell it if we want to get out of there. If this moves forward, I am making the recommendation that each household within the 3-mile radius of this dump be supplied with an air filtration system for our indoor housing, because we cannot continue to take the smells, and we do not want to hear about the lies that have been told about, oh, the 8 hours with the drivers. No, that is not true. We do not want to hear that ash does not smell and cause cancerous things. We know that is not true. And why? Because we have 9/11 to tell us about ash and what the effects of it is, okay? So even the fact, the burden of all of this if you decide to use trucks, if you decide to use trains, we will still be impacted because we will not be able to move around within our communities. What consideration has been given to the volunteer fire departments? If such things should happen and there's a fire, what about our ambulance? You and many of the other people have continued to exhaust our resources for our community and our residents, you meaning the town of Brookhaven. And the fact that you do not allow the oldest and boldest civil rights organization to sit on such community with people who do not live directly in the community, and they are not disenfranchised. It is a disgrace, and it is a slap in the face to the community that has been living there and fronting everything for everybody else. The 4th district is the largest, has the largest population of minorities in it, and we should have been given the respect that we deserve and not allow somebody to cherry pick who they think is representation for us, because they are not. We don't know where they came from, we don't know them, and we frankly don't care. This process should be open to the greater community at large and not a few of the same chosen people that always get chosen for everything. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
You too. Thank you very much for your comments, Dr. Greer-Key. This is important stuff, and I hear you, and we'll get that worked into the final scope. Thank you very much for coming out.
Pete, next we have Will Ferraro coming in.
Hi, Mr. Ferraro. Thank you for coming. Good evening.
Just going to unmute, start my video. Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'm Will Ferraro. I ran last year for town supervisor. More importantly, I'm an activist in the community who's very concerned about issues at the landfill. I'd like to start off with a comment. Somebody had previously mentioned exploring alternative sites. I actually have a few suggested alternative sites. One would be in Manorville. One would be in Center Moriches. Another one would be in Mount Sinai. Now, I realize that there's not a good likelihood of the ash fill being located in these places for obvious reasons, but even if we were able to move it there or construct it there, it wouldn't happen anyway. Why? Because, well, just look at the color of the people who live there. It wouldn't go in my neighborhood in Selden either, quite frankly. And it wouldn't go in the backyards of people like Ed Romaine, Dan Panico, and Dan LaSquadro, who are very powerful in this town. Our town board would not accept this in their backyards, but they'll accept it in somebody else's backyard, especially when that person and the people, who bear the brunt of the effects of this ash fill are people of color. That's number one. Number two, we need to ensure that the public not only gets a comment on something like, in this form with a scoping hearing, but we need to have town halls in every district. Obviously, we're dealing with COVID, but once the spring comes, if we're able to have live audiences, if not, you could just do it on Zoom. We need to have town halls on the much larger issue of waste management in this town, and particularly in Long Island, whether it has to be a regional town hall or specific to this town. Okay, we have to give consideration at the larger problem of what is happening with our trash. How do we reduce the amount of waste that we're producing? Have we looked into a pay-as-you-throw program that municipalities in Colorado, in California, and other municipalities around the country have been able to successfully reduce their waste on a town municipal level by 40 to 50%? There are studies that show that. Why is it that we just rush to this ash fill idea? In the presentation that was shown on the very last slide, the only alternative listed to the ash fill is no action. Why is that the only considered alternative? We have to get creative. We have to put a lot more options on the table, and we have to get serious about giving proper representation to, most importantly, the people in North Bellport and the surrounding areas and Yaphank, but also to people around Brookhaven so that they understand what's going on, because a lot of them, because it doesn't directly impact them from a health perspective, aren't aware aware or as engaged in this issue as those living in the community are. And I think if they knew what was going on to this extent, they would be outraged and they would be on the side of the people in the community. So it's time for Brookhaven to open up this process in ways that they don't normally do as a town, and really have an honest conversation on what's going on in Yaphank and what's being proposed for this landfill. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Farrar. Those are very good comments as well. The alternative sites is important, and the alternatives in general is important, and perhaps more town hall meetings. We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Pete, next we have Maya Schindler, and I think Maya is our last speaker, unless we have anybody else would like to speak. If they can use the chat, please.
Good evening, Ms. Schindler. Thank you for coming.
Hi. Hi, thank you for having me. So I would like to say that we've heard a lot of people, and I completely agree with everybody. So this is definitely an extension of the existing landfill. I mean, we can call it a lot of different names, but this is an expansion. But we have a current landfill that's supposed to close in 2024. And to extend this landfill in this way, you're making it impossible to begin remediation on this old landfill site that we have. When this landfill, the current landfill, was first built in the 70s, as Hannah was describing, a total remediation was part of the plan. There were actual pictures of parks and children playing, and small ski slopes and on the landfill that would be present when they were filled up and the landfill would be closed. Does the town have a plan to remediate the original landfill site? Is there anything being planned? In the RRF document, there was a brief mention of a solar farm on the landfill site. Where did that idea come from? Was anybody in the community consulted? Was any consultation was done in order to come up with that suggestion? Anything?
Well, I can't really answer that. I'm not involved in the front end determination of what to do with the landfill. I mean, there are discussions about repurposing it for some uses, and solar panels have been discussed.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about transparency, and this is part of being transparent. So that point should be very much discussed. You know, it's important.
Yeah, more town board here, maybe a regional town board meetings to discuss the future of waste management in the town. Like that,
just to know if there's any plan whatsoever to how to close the existing landfill before we even try to discuss expanding a landfill or any plan for any new sites. Closing a landfill is a big deal. It needs to be done correctly.
I agree. Absolutely.
And we haven't heard one thing about how to close a landfill.
Okay, well, those are good comments. And as far as the closure of the landfill, I would have to defer to the Department of Materials Management. I'm not privy to those discussions.
I would like to add one more comment, if I can. In the presentation at the end, there was, you know, in case that the new site is not happening, there was mentioning of, Ryan mentioned that there was trucking of the material elsewhere, and also increasing the result would be about increasing taxes. And I think that's a blunt threat to the community, and that needs to stop. Talking about money as increasing tax, that's just not right. There are different ways to talk about that. So that is just not right. So with all due respect.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We're really happy to come out tonight. Thank you, Ms. Schindler.
Pete, you have Cheryl Felice coming in next.
Okay. Good evening, Ms. Felice.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
All right, my computer just shut off, so let's fix that. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Just as a way of background, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Education, but I am a Board of Education trustee for the South Country Central School District, the school district that is that the landfill is located in. So I just wanted to make a comment on items that should be included in the EIS, and that I agree with all of the speakers here tonight and the very well thought out comments that were made. But the ESI must include, with reference to the school district, the fact that this new Asheville facility moving further east is actually moving further away from the Frank P. Long Intermediate School and closer to the Bellport High School and the Bellport Elementary School, both located off of Beaver Dam Road. So those are those impacts. That impact statement has to include how it would affect the staff, faculty, and students and families in the South Country School District, and especially those around this facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Felice. Those are important comments, and we really appreciate you coming out and giving those to us, and we'll be in touch with the school district. Thank you very much.
Pete, next you have Steve Polgar coming in.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, Mr. Polgar. Thank you for coming this evening. There we go.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me. My name is Steve Polgar. I am a candidate for New York State Assembly, District 3. I am a resident of Brookhaven. I've been watching. Clearly, there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of questions and not enough real answers that residents are looking for. I really one question. It's pretty simple. So the EPA and the U.S. Justice Department recently fined Brookhaven almost $250,000. How much of that is going to be paid by the residents who are being poisoned by the landfill, and how much of that is going to be paid for by the politicians that sold that to the residents and told us that it was safe?
Mr. Polgar, I'm sorry, I don't have the answers to that question right now. I just don't. I'm not privy to those discussions nor the settlement. I'd have to look into it. I don't even know. But right now we're here to take the comments to hopefully inform the EIS, and perhaps that situation can be addressed in the EIS. So in the environmental impact statement, you'd like to perhaps have the settlement addressed and discussed in the body of the document?
Yeah, so for fines, if we have future sites, who then is responsible for paying those fines?
Okay, so you'd like that addressed in the document?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can't answer that here right now, but we can add that as a comment and address it in the environmental impact statement as far as the fines that you mentioned and where those funds will come from and who will be responsible for them. So we'll put that in.
All right, thank you.
No, thank you. Good luck.
All right, Pete, we have no more speakers who wish to speak. So just want to let you know that we have no more speakers left. Oh, sorry, Pete, you're muted.
Yeah, well, we have approximately 32 minutes. So if anybody in the audience decides they have a comment, we certainly appreciate them and are happy to hear it. Like I've said, we are accepting written comments. Written comments are very much encouraged. They carry a lot of weight. A written letter always carries a lot of weight, but we also have all your verbal comments in this recording here today. So we will be collecting those, and that will allow for amendments to the draft scope to make it a final scope. That final scope with the comments that you've supplied me this evening, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll touch on a number of these touch on all these topics that were brought up, most notably the environmental justice topics. And we hope to address all those in the environmental impact statement. But I will say the environmental impact statement, once it is drafted and acceptable for public review and will be sent around, we will have another public hearing. And I've noticed through the comments is the concerns about lack of transparency. So that will probably be taken outside of the SEQRA process to the town council specifically to try to remedy that. And get more information out there for the public. As we discussed earlier, at the bottom of the website is the www.brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. That will be the website that will house all the documents that we build up, and I recommend that you visit that page. And there's a lot of good information on the proposal, and it's worth taking a look at to be best informed. So if we have anybody else, we'd be happy to
Real
hear.
quick, some people are asking for us to repeat the web address to submit written comments. I'm just going to let them know that that's brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. And that's an online web form for them to submit their written comment. And we do have one other individual, Bobby Smith, who would like to speak, who I'll bring in now for you, Pete.
Oh, great. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Smith. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. How are you doing today?
Oh,
My name is I go by Robert Ray, Social Justice Director in Healthcare. I actually live right near the landfill in the gated community near there. I seen on Facebook that you guys were having this Q&A. I'm just concerned. I live in a gated community right by the landfill, and I'm concerned about the smell every morning when I wake up and I'm driving. Do you know the history behind the landfill, if it gives cancer or if people have been sick from this landfill in the area? Because I just moved to the area.
Well, I can't really go into that right here, right now. I'm not a medical professional, and I don't have the requisite journal articles that I could cite. That's a difficult question. There's been a lot of speculation back and forth over the years as to the impacts of the landfill. And as previous commenters mentioned, is that a good part of the study that we were going to prepare should look into the existing conditions and any existing health issues that may be attributed to the landfill. So I would hope that in the preparation of the environmental impact statement, we can investigate any health issues that have been traced to the landfill, and try to get a good handle on the documentation and the studies that have been previously done and collect them in one spot. So right now, I couldn't really answer that as well as I'd like to, but we can address the existing health and human safety issues in the environmental impact statement, which typically has a section on existing conditions and impacts. And that's been a comment that has come through this meeting is, what are the health impacts of the existing landfill? The existing landfill already does intern ash. What are the impacts of that? And then, one of the speakers also cited the horrible attacks of 9/11 and the ash issues we're seeing from that day. So that's a very good question, and it should be addressed in the EIS, existing health issues and that can be traced to the landfill. So yeah, that's a very good comment. I wish I could give you better answers, but we can put that into the study and work on it.
Well, thank you for sharing that information with me. As a new resident to that area, it's a concern to me. Driving home when I leave work at 12 at night, I work the 4 to 12 shift, and then I head home. I smell it, and when I wake up, I leave my windows closed because I don't know if that can give any type of health issues. At work, as someone that works in mental health, I'm a mental health therapist. We see things all the time with these type of sceneries. And the smell, I don't know if it can cause cancer or anything like that, but I'll be interested to know what people have said of what what has happened in this community regarding this. But I will continue to use proper precautions to keep my family safe and myself.
Yes, yes. I mean, always better safe than sorry. I wish I could give you more information on that. It's concerning, and well, we welcome you to the neighborhood. Thank you for coming to the town of Brookhaven, and we hope we can provide better for you and your family in the future.
Thank you very much. Well said. And I thank you for having this chat, and you have a great night, sir.
You too. Thanks a lot, Mr. Smith. Take care.
All right, Pete. So we still have nobody else left to speak. So I think you are good on it.
Okay. We still have people participating.
Yes, Pete, there are people in the audience, but there's nobody left who wishes to speak that hasn't already spoken.
Okay, okay. Well, we certainly appreciate everybody who did speak. Anyone who wishes to provide comments, again, on the website, www.brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. We certainly encourage you to visit the site. And there's a form on there to provide written comments, and we'll be collecting those till November 2nd. And we want to hear from you. This is an important project with important implications that need to be studied and need to be hashed out. And we really appreciate the attendance this evening. It's been good. It's been informative. Thank you. And with that, we'll have the presentation available on the website probably first thing tomorrow morning. If it's not there already, we have the draft scoping document on the site that can be reviewed. Again, any comments, suggestions, questions, anything that you can provide is certainly appreciated. Again, thank you for coming out this evening. It's I know it's a busy time, and it's not easy to make it to any meeting, let alone an evening meeting after work. So thank you for your input. So I'm going through the Q&A window here. Like I mentioned, please feel free to make any comments. All this is being captured for review and amendment to the draft scope to provide the final scoping document. So all the items that you're writing on the Q&A, please, they're being captured. Written comments, you can send the written comments to my attention at the Town Hall building. My name is Peter Fontaine. I'm in the Division of Environmental Protection, and the Town Hall building address is 1 Independence Hill in Farmingville, New York, and the zip code there is 11738. But we will also be taking email comments, of course, and the form comments from the website. Yeah, a number of these comments I'd have to do a little research on getting back to you, and we will have to address them in an environmental impact statement. There are some very good comments here, so I hope everyone's able to see them, and please feel free to keep them coming. Yeah, this is we will I mean, we'll continue to reach out to the community through the town website, through local papers, the environmental notice bulletin, you know, any written comments. If you provide emails, your email address, we can put you on a list to reach out to you with when things come up. Can we bring anybody else in, Matt?
It looks like we don't have anybody else who hasn't spoken already who would like to speak. So just want to reiterate that the web address again is brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. There's some chats that are indicating that people may not have access to technology to do that. So if they want to mail in comments, the period is 30 days, and our mailing address is 1 Independence Hill in Farmingville, which is 11738. So people can mail in their comments to Town Hall. They can visit our website at brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. And if anybody else is left who'd like to speak, they can just use the chat window if they haven't already spoken. I just want to clarify, somebody had mentioned that the web page only brings them to the environmental section of our website. So that again, that link, brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future, the ability to submit public comment is in the middle of the page under the public scoping meeting section. There's a subtitle called Public Comment Period. And there's a link there to use our online public comment submission form, where they can use our online form to submit written comment from their phone, their computer, 24/7, whenever they'd like.
Okay, can you see my screen right now, Matt?
We cannot.
Oh, okay. I was gonna just drive us to that page. How about now? So this is the website that we were discussing earlier. Towards the middle of the page where the public scoping meeting is posted, there's the public comment period. So you can use the online public comment submission form by clicking this, and you can submit a comment. And so that'll be captured and sent to us so please feel free to fill those out. It's a very useful website that our IT personnel were able to put together. They really are amazing and do a very nice job. Towards the bottom of the page is the project information and documents, including the part 1 of the full environmental assessment form, the attachment to the full environmental assessment form, which has greater detail, part 2 of the full environmental assessment form, part 3 with the attachments, again, going into further detail of the proposal, the resolution that adopted the positive declaration that indicated that an environmental impact statement needed to be prepared to review this proposal, and then the actual positive declaration itself, the draft scoping document, and the site location map. So please visit the page when you can And feel free to supply comments again until November 2nd. And we appreciate your input. Thank you.
All right, Pete, we have Kareem has somebody with him, Mr. Dennis Nick. So we're going to bring Kareem Odekin back into the meeting.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Odekin, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
My name is Dennis Nick. I just have one question. Where are the town representatives? Like, will we be able to ask them?
Sorry to interrupt. Sir, we aren't able to hear you.
Landfill and things like in that nature.
Yeah, we weren't able to hear you. I'm sorry. Maybe get a little bit closer to the phone.
Can you hear me?
You're very low. Peter, are you able to hear him?
I can hear him.
1 second. Can you hear us now?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I just have one simple question. I know that you're taking comments now, but I just wanted to know in the future, will the landfill representatives be answering questions about these issues we have in the future?
Well, I can't say that for sure because I don't direct them. They direct me. And so with the outcome of this meeting, with the call for future public meetings and outreach, I have a good feeling that we're going to have some public meetings with questions and answers. But that's not necessarily up to me. We will have an actual public hearing on the environmental impact statement where the town board would be present.
Okay.
And of course, anything you'd like to submit. And
because I know that Chris Andres runs the landfill. You know, will he be there to answer questions that we have?
I can't speak for him. I don't know. I hopefully if we get questions through this scoping process, we can try to address a lot of these in writing in the environmental impact statement. And then once they're documented and people can review them, then at the public hearing, we can hopefully, have more of a dialogue. But yeah, direct questions and answers. I wish I could provide that for you, but I can't say if that's going to happen or not. But I will. I'm writing that down, and I'll be speaking to them about it.
Thank you.
I have a question for
Thank you.
Too. Hi, Peter.
Hi.
You're a senior environmental analyst for the town of Brookhaven. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm the principal environmental analyst now.
Principal environmental analyst. So the town of Brookhaven submitted this proposal to the state in 2017. Can you tell us what your office has been doing in the last 3 years to plan for this expansion of the Brookhaven town landfill?
Well, it's not a real question and answer session right now, but I will tell you that my involvement only began with the proposed regional recovery and recycling residue facility. I didn't have any input before this. In our division of environmental protection, we're somewhat separated from recycling materials management. We work in the planning division, and my position is typically reviewing development projects or answering questions or just providing information to town council members or the planning board. So yeah, I haven't been involved, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Pete, so we have the Candace would like to speak next, I believe, just to go over the next steps, talk about the public hearing, and where some information can be found about this project. So Candace from VHB, if you could come on, please.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I just wanted to add in to make sure that everybody understood that hard copies of the information, the project information, will also be available at local libraries. So I know there's a lot of stuff being posted online, and I did want to make sure that people understood that there was hard copies available for review also.
Candace, can you also let the audience know about the public hearing and what the next steps will be?
So the next steps, the public hearing won't happen until after the draft environmental impact statement is prepared. So like Peter said, there's a lot of questions and answers tonight that may require us going and having some smaller group meetings, and we need to, as a team, get back together and figure out the best approach for that. But the draft environmental impact statement will be available for full public review after it's prepared, and then there'll be the formal public hearing that people are typically used to having. Does that answer the question?
It does, Candace. And about how long will that process take?
Well, it depends on the technical analysis and the preliminary design. We are shooting to have the draft environmental impact statement completed by the beginning of 2021. But as we get into technical analyses and the review, you know, sometimes that gets pushed a little depending. It could also get pushed if we have additional alternatives that we look at. And so we'll probably have a better idea of that once we have a final scope in hand.
Okay, and Candace, we have a lot of questions about the technical analysis. Can you go into a little more detail about what that process is going to be like and what that is?
So there's, and just, you know, I can add as much as I know at this point, but there are several technical analyses being done for specific areas that we talked about. For instance, the traffic impact study, the hydrogeologic report, the odor control plan, all of those will be summarized and available for full review. And just one other thing, at the back of the draft scope, there's a list of all of that information and references that we're anticipating incorporating into the draft EIS. So people have a list of that now that they can look at and provide input on if they want.
Candace, there was a question about an archaeological study. Do you know, is that going to be a part of this process as well?
So we're coordinating with the office, with the State Office of Historic Preservation, and they really guide what we have to do for that. So we have to get coordination underway with them, let them look at the site, what's being potentially proposed. And so all that will be public information. The input from the parks, or the Office of Parks Historic Preservation, that'll be public and people can see how they responded to our coordination.
Candace, we also had a question about the effect on wildlife, more specifically the eastern box turtle.
Yes, so there'll be a, I'm sorry, Matt, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the question was, will that be included in the study if the the effect of wildlife and more specifically the eastern box turtle they're asking about.
Yes, so we'll do a field investigation for that. We also coordinate with state resource agencies on any threatened and endangered species. So we're also similar to the cultural resources. We're guided by what's required by the state agency.
All right, Pete, we have about 5 minutes left. If you want to give maybe a quick conclusion and wrap up on your end.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for all the very good and informative comments that we received from the public. I'm going through the question and answer issues here, and there's some good topics to expand the draft scope. I certainly appreciate that. A number of these questions I'm going to have to find answers to myself, but we will certainly be addressing them in the environmental impact statement. That's the purpose of this meeting. There's a public scoping meeting to inform the environmental impact statement. And I think we have a number of good issues, well, a number of issues that need to be explored. And I think given the rich questions that have been added to the record here tonight, yeah, we might take a little bit longer than anticipated. It'll have to be a robust document to address the issues that came up. But what again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Please visit the website at www.brookhavenny.gov/planning for the future. And we'll be accepting written comments until November 2nd. I can't emphasize enough how important written comments are in the SEQRA process, and we certainly appreciate getting them if you can supply them. We do have the form on the website, and we hope that is useful to the public to address to add any other comments before the November 2nd closing period. Again, that won't be the last opportunity to comment on this project. We still have a number of documents to develop, and there will still be public hearings on the project. And as we discussed here, you know, I feel a theme through the meeting has been public outreach, and so we'll be taking all that under consideration to hopefully, you know, get a good project information out there to people, and a good conversation back and forth to provide information to the public. But again, my name is Peter Fontaine. I'm from the Division of Environmental Protection in the town of Brookhaven. Please feel free to submit written comments to the town of Brookhaven, 1 Independence Hill, Farmingville, New York, 11738, to my attention. The website, emails, any method that you can supply comments, we'll gladly accept. So please don't feel like it has to be something incredibly formal or, you know, or anything like that. We'll take any comments that you can supply, and we appreciate that and look forward to them. So thank you very much for everybody coming out tonight. It was a good informative meeting to take back and discuss these issues with other members of the town, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming out tonight, and feel free to contact us with future comments. Thank you.
Pete, one final item. For the next steps for people to get notifications, there are a few questions about how people will get notified about the public hearing and the next steps. Can you talk to the use of the town website and keeping that up to date and current, and more of a live living web page rather than a static web page where people can go and get up to date information about the process throughout the next, in the future?
Well, after this meeting, I believe I'm pretty sure we'll be expanding the website to hopefully address some of the questions that were raised and some of the questions and issues that were raised this evening. So that website will continually expand and be a living document, if you will. So please check that regularly. We will be going through our normal town announcement processes through the local newspapers, the environmental notice bulletin of the New York State DEC, and of course, anybody who submits comments with their email address, they'll be put on a list, and we'll be sure to reach out to them for future meetings and things of that nature.
All right, Pete, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you for coming out and attending tonight, and we're going to conclude the meeting.
Thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate the work of the IT department on this meeting and all the Zoom work that you guys have done. It's very much appreciated.